Now, almost 1 million social grant beneficiaries in Gauteng will be getting their grants over the next 2 days. Grants are being paid earlier this month due to the nationwide lockdown. As elsewhere in the country, social distancing remains a challenge whilst people stand in the queues. Now, for the latest on the collection of SASSA grants in Alexandra, just north of Johannesburg, we're now joined by our reporter, Nozintombi Mir. Nozintombi, thanks very much indeed for joining us. I would imagine that today is unlike other days where these grants are paid out. Tell us what the situation is where you are in Alexandra.
Well, a very good afternoon to you, Peter. It certainly has been not quite a business as usual. And you know, Alexandra is one of those townships in and around Gauteng that really has quite a large number of people who collect social grants. And, you know, we've been expecting that there would be elements of chaos, but it has been controlled to quite a large extent. And at the place where we're standing now, the Pan-African Mall in Alexandra, which is one of the biggest malls in the township, there have been quite a lot of security guards and police officers making sure that there is law and order that is taking place. I mean, the queue is snaking all the way outside to the pavement of this particular shopping mall, just for people to be able to get in to the mall, to be able to either go to the Pick and Pay or to collect their social grants. And you'll know that the Pick and Pay here specifically, as well as the post office, has run out of money. And this is problematic for the people who are the elderly and those who are able to here to collect their social grants, because it means that they're waiting even longer in the queues as the money slowly starts to trickle in. We've seen quite a number of the private security guards bringing in money slowly, staggeredly, but it's meant that the elderly people have had to wait even longer. And what I want to show you now, I'm just going to ask my camera colleague to show you some of the social distancing measures that have been put in place now. You'll see that at the bottom here, there are queues and there are lines. Everybody's supposed to stand in their lines. And with some people, it does seem to be working. With others, it doesn't seem to be working quite as well. But we're going to speak to this gentleman over here. We're going to speak to some of the people here. Thank you so much. Hi, sir. How are you?
All right, and you?
How long have you been waiting in this particular?
I can say it's about 30 to an hour now, because I've been queuing from outside up to where am I now.
Yes.
So it's just like a long time I'm waiting on the queue. Yeah.
Are you aware of the coronavirus and the measures that are being put in place to ensure everybody's safety?
Yes, I'm aware on that, and I agree with what is going on now. We have to keep ourselves safe, and we have to follow the rules. What they've been saying, we have to follow on that. So I'm so glad with that. Thank you.
And in this queue that I saw, there's been 50% compliance with regards to people following social cues. Do you think in the hour that you've been waiting, people have been following social distancing?
I think so, yeah. We have to follow
In
it.
the queue, you can walk up to your next slot here, so you're standing quite a distance from the guy in front of you.
All right.
So you continue, you were saying.
I was saying it seems like we are complaining on the queue like they told us, and I think everyone must follow the route what they've been saying, so that we can keep ourselves safe and secure. Thank you very much.
Yes, okay, thank you so much, sir. And Peter, as you can see, as we're walking through this particular queue to speak to some of the people here, here are some youngsters here who are just going to tell us about. Hi, how are you?
Fine.
You've also been waiting in the queue for quite a while. This queue has really, it's spanned all the way to the traffic lights, actually.
Yeah.
How has that wait been for you?
Everything it seems very scary because people are dying. So I'm also scared.
Yes.
Yeah, so this coronavirus is too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And you, sir, how has the wait been for you?
Okay, it's actually like testing our patience. To be honest, we're not used to this environment. Hence, we have to comply with the law set by the government, for our own safety. I believe this was not made because now they're trying to slow everything down, but only just for our own safety.
Yes.
So the wait has been quite a bit of a struggle in a way, But at the end of the day, they were doing it for the best of the community.
So, as much as the mall itself implementing social distancing cues, we'll continue walking with you. What has it been in the township specifically? Are people following social distancing cues?
My sister, I'm not gonna lie, people are not. They're not complying to that. They're not even actually taking it serious that this virus, it's there, it's living, and it's gonna endanger our lives. Looking at the townships, they're still living their life normally. And I think if I caught it right, well, Italy, the same thing that happened. They were told about the virus, they didn't take it serious, lived their life normally until now things got out of hand. So actually,
my last question to you, sir, what advice would you give to people also in the township who are living in very small and enclosed quarters about taking this seriously and how absolutely dangerous this particular virus is?
Well, my lady, the unfortunate part is on the location, on the townships. There's like overcrowded places whereby you cannot even adhere to the social distancing. But the best thing to do is just to at least keep the kids inside the house, not let the kids play, because it's growing every day. So the best thing to do is just to keep the kids indoors, and it's a responsibility by the parents, unfortunately, even though they're not complying to this virus that we're facing.
All right, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
I'm going to ask Peter, for my camera person, to just show you the queue as the marshals, the queue marshals and the security guards are really trying to ensure that people make sure that they keep to the issue of social distancing. I think you can hear from some of the voices of the people who are here at this particular Pick n Pay to either come and collect their grant money or to do their shopping, that really it is a very serious concern and a serious issue for them, Peter.
All right, so you know what, we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much indeed, Nozintombi Mia, who's doing the best she can under challenging circumstances there, long queues. Well, for more on this, I'm now joined in studio by reporter Hasina Gori, who's been monitoring this story as well. And you were in...
I was in Soweto.
Yeah.
We went out as
Thank you.
and already.
Can you do some... Thank you so much. Thank you very
All
much.
right,
Thank
okay.
you.
It sounds like your microphone isn't working, so we're going to try and get somebody to fix that. But just to let you know, we're going to be trying to go to various areas across the country to try and get a sense of what's been happening with the SASSA payments today. And I believe Griselda Lewis has been out and about today as well. Let's join her now. Griselda, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, Griselda, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Peter. Very good afternoon to you.
Okay, Griselda, tell us where you were today and what was your experience?
All right, Peter, let me just start off by giving you an update, as of midday. Overall, at that time, there had already been about 2 billion worth of transactions that were made by midday. Well, that's, of course, Peter, over the next 2 days for the old age and disability grants, which are being paid out over the 2 days. So more than 1.8 million beneficiaries accessing their grants through the ATM, and with close to about 800,000 beneficiaries accessing the grants over the counter at post offices. We started in Alexandra Township very early this morning. The Social Development Minister was there to assess whether everything was going well. And at that time, we could see that inside some of the malls where some of the beneficiaries were trying to access their grants, there was a great social distancing effort that was being put in place there, with some of, for example, like the post office, who had put chairs for the elderly quite far apart from each other to ensure that they're able to sit and wait their turn. But the massive problem was generally outside some of these retailers, where you would have some of these beneficiaries going to access their grants. The lines there were quite long. It's very difficult due to, for example, Peter, the density of Alexandra Township, where there are a lot of people in that particular area, and government is still struggling at this point to try and ask, residents in some of those areas to maintain a social distance. So it's one of the issues that government is still grappling with at the moment. But overall, one of the things that the Social Development Minister, Lindiwe Zulu, had basically complained about was that she did not see any police officers in the early hours of this morning. I would say at around about, say, 8 o'clock this morning. She was concerned about the lack of police in that particular area, but she was hoping that during the course of the day that would then be resolved. She said she did write a letter to the Minister of Police, Peggy Cele, asking for assistance in this particular regard. And from there, Peter, we went to Diepsloot, one of the malls in that particular area, where we also found that some of the security guards at that particular mall were also assisting some of the beneficiaries to maintain that social distance and giving the elderly some chairs to sit on while they awaited their turn. Just a few incidents where as well some of the electricity had gone off at one of the malls where we were, but the post office moved quite fast to ensure that they were able to reconnect the electricity by using other means to ensure that they were able to continue dispensing those social grants.
All right, Griselda, I wonder, did you get a sense of added anxiousness from the people that were in the queues, given what's been going on around them?
Oh, absolutely, Peter. From what we gauged, you would recall since the start of the lockdown, and even a day before, there had been speculation that the president would announce a lockdown in South Africa. We saw a lot of panic buying that took place in the country. So remember, those who are part of the most vulnerable in the country, who are those who access these social grants, who rely on these social grants from government, today was their day, was their only day to be able to go out and buy groceries and much needed necessities. So it was unlikely that we were not going to find some of these long lines at some of these retail stores, because you would know that there had been a sense of panic on their part, that over the past few days you had quite a number of people who had an opportunity, who'd been paid much earlier, to go out and buy some of their much needed groceries and medication for some of them. So this was the first chance that they got. And remember that only today, this is where you have the old age and disability grants that are being paid out over the next 2 days. And the other beneficiaries will have their chance on the 1st of April. So it was really, even though the day itself had been brought forward, remember, the payments that are being made today and tomorrow have been brought forward because the department did not want to have a situation where there was overcrowding on a day when payments would all be paid at once. So it also created a bit of a challenge, because in speaking to most of the beneficiaries, they indicated that as soon as they left those particular pay points, they would be rushing to the stores in order to get some food supplies as well as medication, and then they would go back home as well. Remember also that the Transport Department had also relaxed some of the regulations as well, Peter, to accommodate these beneficiaries. The transport itself, buses and taxis, had been operating from 5 o'clock this morning. They'll be operating into 8 o'clock this evening, to also allow for those who are probably still in some of the lines to be able to buy groceries this afternoon and be able to make their way home. And the Minister as well also indicating, the Minister of Social Development indicating, she'd also written a letter to the Defence Minister, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, to see if some of the buses cannot be used if there becomes a challenge of transport this afternoon into the evening. So they're really trying to ensure that this process does go ahead without any glitches under this particular lockdown.
All right, Griselda, we're going to leave it there. Thanks very much indeed for that update, and we'll catch up with you again a little bit later on. All right, let's come back to studio now. Hasina was out in Soweto today, Jabulani, and the experiences that we've just heard from Nozintombi Mia and Griselda, is that something that you saw as well?
Yes, that's what we basically saw as well in Soweto. We were at Jabulani, which we were told was one of the busiest pay points in the south of Johannesburg. They were expecting to pay out at least 2,000 of the beneficiaries just today alone, mainly the elderly and the disabled. And I just want to bring in that the elderly are the most high risk when it comes to COVID-19. Yeah. They are immunocompromised and the most vulnerable group right now. So them being out today was, and in that numbers, was also a cause for concern. Where we were, when we got there at 6:30, there was no social distancing. There was long queues snaking through the mall. And what the mall management had done, which was quite interesting, was they had separate queues depending on where you're going. If you're going for your grants, either to an ATM or to the post office, which were the only two that was paying out today, you stood in specific lines. If you're going to game, for instance, or to ShopRite, you stood in a separate line. That meant that no one was just walking into the mall and there was like hundreds of people in, like we've seen at other malls. Then they only allowed 10 at a time into specific stores. So there was a lot of coordination there. We saw sanitizer for some time, and then there was no sanitizer again. We saw chairs for the elderly, similarly as we saw, and Alexandra, but just for maybe the first 100. And the rest beyond that were still standing quite close to each other. We did see a lot of law enforcement coming through the day. We spoke with the acting MEC for Gauteng's social development, Panyaza Losufi, about specifically crime during this time, because we saw an incident at Jabulani Mall quite early when the SASSA doors or post office doors just opened, where old gentleman was trying to be robbed by a young gentleman, and mall security was very swift in acting and apprehending him. And they said that they had asked for all their CPF members and patrollers to now be brought to these pay points, just to ensure first social distancing is kept, as well as to ensure that those that are going out today, the vulnerable and the old, and getting their food and their money, they do so safely, because I mean the roads are a lot quieter than usual, so it is opportunistic and petty crimes that you could see happening during this time.
How many people would you say you saw today? I mean, you know, one of the largest centres, there must have been quite a gathering.
It was thousands. What we did notice was that police officers as well as other officials were there to make sure people with children, not to stand in the line with them, either make them stand away, just to not have that place where people can be in contact with various number of people. We saw pamphlets being handed out, which I think is really important to educate people right now. A lot of them that we spoke to as well said that while there's education, they don't have access to sanitizers or to specific soaps, and had asked for government to actually assist and implement these kind of measures, that while they understand, they don't think they can implement social distancing or specific hygiene measures where they live, which was quite an interesting nuance that we heard coming out a lot.
I am curious, and I asked Griselda this, how they feel, especially elderly. They must have had a sense that, we are a little bit more vulnerable. Was there that kind of anxiousness?
There was a bit of that anxiousness, but also there was an old lady that we spoke to, and she just told us, I hate this virus. I hate it. I can't see my family. So you can imagine for elderly who in our family can't really have contact with them, that they're feeling even more isolated as well. So I think that is the kind of anxiousness that they're feeling, a bit of uncertainty as well. How exactly do they take care of themselves, keep themselves safe, as well as social distance and get all their necessities. A lot of them saying that they are grateful that the monies had come in today and the payouts came in today, meaning that they could go and stock up on necessities. They've been waiting, there's nothing at home. Just talking to the kind of levels of poverty that we're seeing in these areas in South Africa, where they could only stock up today. They couldn't do it 2 weeks ago, and now that their payouts have come out, they can do that in the next few days.
It does seem the authorities have done the best they can under very trying circumstances, relaxing the transport regulations, and as you were saying, separating queues and things like that.
There are measures being put in place. People are trying. I see that businesses as well as, complex management and officials are all trying to play their part. I've seen police officers, even in Alex when we were there on Friday, literally telling people, stand apart, 1 meter apart, please move. And they'll do that. And then the minute the police officials leave, they kind of close up again. It's going to be a while for people to understand the reasoning behind it. It does mean that queues go slower. That because businesses are only allowing 5 at a time, maybe inside certain stores. So people are going to have to understand and maybe even stagger the way that we shop, where everyone doesn't just come out in one day specifically, where we allow for, certain areas to shop. And I think we're going to, through trial and error, figure out, yeah.
All right, and I suppose the staggering of the days also assists just to limit the numbers, because on an ordinary sessions in the past, it'd all be done on one day.
Yep, normally it would be done on the 1st of April, which would be all the different various types of grants that are paid out. Today and tomorrow is just the elderly and the disabled, and the rest would come in. What I can mention is that we did see some elderly sending their children with the cards, those that get paid out straight into their cards, so that they could just go to the stores and buy the necessities. Others that said they'd come tomorrow maybe because the lines were really, really long. So people are trying, instead of seeing the millions coming out just on Wednesday by itself, they have staggered it out, buses as well, to ship people through to and from their areas, to make sure that everyone gets the necessities that they need, and we can then go into a period of lockdown where actually people stay in their homes and we don't see that hundreds outside like we've seen since Friday.
All right, what would you say is the biggest difference between what's playing out now in the middle of this pandemic and other normal payout sessions, apart from the fact that before it just happens on one day?
I think that with the panic as well, with people seeing others panic buying, everyone has come out. Where we would say, oh, maybe I'll go on the weekend. Now people are uncertain of whether or not they're going to get what they need, whether their necessities that they need, for their home is going to be there. So people have come out, they're unsure what might happen, they're not sure. Sometimes they're even unsure whether they can even go shopping, or whether they will be stopped after this. So I think that's what we're seeing differently today. You do normally see these kind of lines. It usually is busy in town. You'd notice it if you're going up and down, but these numbers are way more than usual. Even people that we've spoken to saying that they came out as early as 4:45 in the morning.
Well, all right. Hasina, thanks very much indeed. I'm sure we'll be chatting a bit more, and as you say, we'll probably figure these things out as the days proceed. Thanks so much indeed for your insights.